In this video, I'll go over engine management for the Ka-50. You control the engine with the collective here. When you raise the collective, it increases the angle of the blades and your helicopter will go up. You can see the angle of the blades right here. When I bring up the collective, the angle increases. Basically, you use the collective to change your altitude, and you can also use it to change your speed. If you need to speed up, you can increase your collective and push the nose forward. Now, when you change the collective, it'll also change the RPM of the engines here. If I bring up the collective, the RPM goes up, and you can see the temperature of the engines will also increase. Also, you might notice there's two RPM gauges. The one on the left is for the speed of your rotors, and the one on the right is for the speed of your engine. Next, we have these yellow levers right here. These control the speed of the engines. You use page up and page down to move them up and down. Also, if you want to control one lever individually, you can do right shift and page up, page down for the right engine, and right alt for the left engine. There's 4 positions: idle, governor failure, auto, and maximum. If you have the levers all the way down, they'll be in the idle position, which is what you use when you're starting up the helicopter. If you bring them up to the second position, that is governor failure. That is used for if the automatic engine governors fail, you can put them in that position so that it doesn't overspeed the engines. The next position is auto, which is what they're in right now. 99% of the time, you're going to have it in automatic mode. The way you can tell they'll be in auto is that they'll be just before this little latch. If I bring them up, you can see the latch goes up. So you don't want it to be there, you want them to be in auto. The last position is maximum power. In max power, the lever goes all the way up like this. Max power is used in case one of your engines fail. For example, if my left engine fails, I can put the right throttle into maximum power. Next, I'll show you the engine power gauge. This is one of the main things you're going to look at when you're flying. When you bring up your collective, you can see the yellow bars will go up. There's 3 power settings. The lowest red notch here is for your cruise setting. The red one in the middle is maximum continuous power, and the highest red one is maximum takeoff power. The next gauges you have are over here on the right. These show you the oil pressure and temperatures for the left and right engines and for the transmission. The next thing to look at are the engine governors. You can turn the governors on with these switches right here. Make sure they're flipped up. The governors do 2 things. They limit the speed of the gas generator, which is kind of like the inner part of the engine, and they limit the speed of the turbine, which is the part that's connected to the rotor. So for the gas generator, if it gets too fast, they automatically send less fuel to the engine in order not to overspeed it. You can test the gas generator RPM limiting function. I'm going to bring up my RPM all the way, and I'm going to increase my collective a little bit. And when I flip up this switch, you should see the temps go down. As you can see, they are decreasing. Another way you can limit it is by using these 2 buttons up here. If you hold down this button, it lowers the threshold to kick in the limiter. So you can do it for the left engine or right engine. So if I do it for the left engine, once again, you can see the temps go down. You can also test the transmission RPM limiter. There's basically 2 channels here, 1 and 2. And if both of them detect an over limit for the transmission RPM, then it will automatically shut off your engine. So if you want, you can test one individual channel. If I test channel 1, you'll hear a warning. And you can flip it down to test the other channel. One thing to keep in mind is that when you're testing this, make sure you don't flip it down really quickly from the top all the way to the bottom. If both of the channels are activated in a short enough amount of time, it will automatically turn your engine off. Another engine test you can do is test the vibration detection system by clicking this button right here. When you click it, you should hear an audio cue from the ecran. Another engine control we have is this switch right here. If you have it up, it turns on the anti-ice for the engine intakes. And if you're taking off or landing in a dusty area, you can put it down to turn on the dust filters. Some more engine controls we have are the generators. If you have these switches flipped on, then the engines will power the electrical generators. There's also the fire extinguisher panel here. If you have a fire detected, you'll see one of these lights come on. Now, if you have the switch in automatic mode, then when it detects a fire, it'll automatically dispense bottle number 1, and you'll see this light come on, which means the bottle has been used. If for some reason it doesn't automatically dispense bottle 1 when a fire comes on, then you can manually click the button. When bottle 1 gets dispensed, if there is still a fire for some reason, you can flip this into manual mode, and then you have bottle 2 you can use to try to get rid of the fire. Then there's the warning switch here. This should just be left on. This powers the warning lights here. Then there's this position. This should just be left in operate. However, you can also turn it off, or you can put it to the test position, and in the test position you can set this switch here to these different positions to test all the different fire sensors. Now when you run the fire test warning, the crane is going to play a bunch of different messages, so if you want to stop them, you can just click the off button. Next, I'll go over this panel here. This is used for starting your engines. So you can use this switch to select what you want to start. In the middle, it's for the APU, and you can start the left engine or the right engine. I'll talk about turbo gear a little bit later. This is used for your starting mode. Up is a normal start. If you set it to the crank position, it'll blow air through the engines, but it will not inject fuel. So that's used in case the engine is flooded and you need to get all the fuel out of the engine before you try starting it again. And then there's the false start position. This will run the engine and inject fuel like normal. It's just that it won't turn on the igniters. So this is mainly just used for checking systems. In DCS, I don't think there's a need to do the false start. If you do want to do the false start for some reason, keep in mind, after you do the false start, you need to run it in the crank position to get all the fuel out of the engine before you can start it normally. And if you're wondering how you would do the engine crank, it's basically like a normal startup. You set it to crank, set your engine, and click start, and the RPM will go up. And once it gets up to like 20%, you just leave it there for like 10 seconds, and then you can stop it, and then you can do a normal startup. Next, we have the APU, or the auxiliary power unit. The APU is basically an extra small engine in the back of the plane that creates air you can use to start your main engines. Here's the RPM gauge for the APU, and there's also some lights here. This top left light just means the fuel is open, so if I open the APU fuel valve, you can see that light will come on. This light just means there's normal oil pressure. This light will come on if the APU goes too fast and automatically shuts itself off, and this light will come on when the APU is running. Basically, the only time you use the APU in the Black Shark is when you need to start your engines. Now, the APU does have the ability to run your electrical and hydraulic systems. However, in order to do that, you have to use something called the turbo gear. Basically, when you're on the ground, if you want to use the APU to run your electrical systems and hydraulics, you can contact the ground crew and you can change power source and you can request the turbo gear. And basically, what you have to do is once they put the turbo gear on, you just start the APU like normal, and when the APU is running, you set this to the turbo gear position, and then you can turn on your generators and the APU will power your electrical and hydraulic systems for you. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that the turbo gear system is only meant to be used on the ground. If you decide to connect the turbo gear but you want to start your engines and fly around, then you need to ask the ground crew to disconnect the turbo gear before you start up normally. Lastly, for the engines, we have the fuel controls. You can see the fuel shutoffs for the left and right engines here, and these red levers here are also fuel shutoffs for the engines. Those were the engine systems for the Black Shark. Thanks for checking out this video, and I'll see you later.